Welcome to Notepad. I'm your host Ibrahim Sani. We continue our discussion with my most favorite sector, which is consumer. And of course, in this sense, we're talking about the F&B business. Very recently, Subway has announced the Master Franchise Agreement that will unlock about 500 outlets in the next 10 years in Malaysia. Joining me in the studio right now is Samad Shariff, the Country Director of Southeast Asia of Subway. So Samad, it's always interesting to talk about some of the ideas when it comes to consumer business, but more so when it comes to businesses that is using, so to speak, an old-fashioned model, pardon me, but a tried and tested one. Old-fashioned doesn't mean it's bad. Old-fashioned also means it's tried and tested. In this sense, the Master Franchise Agreement. Now, it is an ambitious goal to open 500 outlets in Malaysia over the next 10 years. Maybe we can start with a baseline. How many outlets do you have now?
Okay, currently we have about 280 restaurants. But the 500 restaurant is on top of the 280 that we're having now. So that's
about 700 soon.
Yes, correct. That's the plan.
And then, of course, you're looking at Southeast Asia. So how many markets are you looking at right now?
Okay, currently in Southeast Asia, we actually have 6 operating markets, including Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, of course, is one of it. Philippines, we are operating in Philippines as well. Right? Currently, Thailand has already converted to a master franchise. We are actually working on other countries as well.
Okay, sorry. Okay, this took me by surprise. So not all the markets have master franchise?
Not yet, because basically, Subway, we are a 50-year-old company, right? So there was an operating model before. This master franchise is an evolving model for us.
Okay.
Right? So in Southeast Asia currently, we actually have Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia that have converted to a master franchise.
And the rest of the markets is still single owner?
It's still, yes. It's what we call our business developer model.
Okay.
Where essentially every country is broken up into a couple of pieces, and then each piece is actually given to a different partner.
So it's like a district or region
something like that, yes.
Okay.
Something similar.
What would be some of the impetus that goes into this idea of whether a market goes into a master franchise versus I don't know what you call it, district business?
A business developer model.
Business developer.
Well, for us, we actually look at the opportunity of growth for the market itself. For example, like Malaysia, for the past 20 years, it sounds big. We are actually at, like I said, 280 restaurants, but 280 restaurants within 20 years means only about 20 restaurants a year. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so for us, being on our multi-year transformational program, both working on our products, development, service, experience, and all that, store growth is actually important for us, right? So Malaysia was actually chosen just for that purpose, right? Basically, based on our internal analysis, we found that there's a lot of white spaces in Malaysia itself that can give us that 500 stores or beyond 500 stores.
Okay, we're going to go into the white spaces per se, but before we jump to that, let's talk a little bit more into the sales and the contribution of the markets that you're overlooking. Where do Malaysia stand in terms of the 6 markets that you're looking at?
Okay, at this point in time, Malaysia is actually second to Singapore.
Oh, okay.
Right? And the best thing, I would say the best thing about Malaysia is even during the pandemic, and for us internally, the year 2020 and 2021 was a year that we sort of like used it as a test bed of what will happen in the future, right? So when we actually compare our sales, we found that Malaysia, compared against pre-pandemic, has actually gone up almost 40%, right, against 2019, right? So that shows us that there's tremendous growth, and that's where we actually then wanted to convert to a master franchise as soon as we could.
What would be the contributing factor to that jump of 40%?
I think mainly it's changing of the model. I said we were actually on a multi-year remodeling scheme, right? Where most of the restaurants look old, looks jaded. We have actually revisited them, changing them into what we call our fresh forward model. The fresh forward model is more inclined towards what we are, which is actually fresher food, right? More pastel colors, greener, more showcasing of what we offer, our food, right? So it actually gives the consumer a more fresher feeling when they actually walk into the restaurant.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the consumer branding and consumer outlook of the brand itself. I would tend to agree with you that some of the restaurants that you have is rather dated.
Dated, yes.
And the idea here is that everywhere I work, in all the organizations that I work, there tends to be a Subway downstairs. It's so bizarre, but that's the case. Except for here, because we're quite isolated.
Well, we can open one soon.
but there is little to no change to the menu, little to no
Understand.
change to
Understand.
the hardware of the shop, little to no
Understand.
change to the way things are being done, served.
Understand.
Do you feel that there comes a time when I don't know, do you guys do a brand audit or a brand just to take a sense of what people think about the brand itself?
We do, to be honest. We actually do it on an annual basis, or even some country on a semi-annual basis, right? But the challenge for us the last couple of years is, even after we actually do the audit, the ability to actually implement some of the changes was curtailed, of course, by COVID, right? I mean, some of the stores, no dining, you can't do this, you can't do that, right? So basically, what we are actually trying to do now, effectively a little bit post-COVID, is trying to accelerate some of those things that we are doing. Like, for example, you said no change in the menu. In fact, if you see the last couple of months, we have actually been trying to localize as much as we could. Recently, we actually had the rendang sandwich here in Malaysia, right? That did very well, I think, and for here, Malaysian, I think they want to see more of that, so we are working on that, right? The other thing that we are accelerating is, like I mentioned earlier, remodeling of the store, which is actually key. Because when people walk into the store, they want to see a fresher look, right, for us, and that's very important. Yeah.
So how do you leverage on the delivery service under the new master franchise? How would all these franchisees work in tandem with some of the delivery service companies out there, from I don't know, Grab
or Foodpanda? Interesting question. In fact, Malaysia was one of the markets that we actually had delivery pre-pandemic. So we actually started quite early. And that was one of our saviors during the pandemic, right? Because during the pandemic, when people were locked down, the choices were limited in terms of food, right? So Subway then became a very obvious choice for a lot of people. And in fact, I think at a certain point in time, the delivery went up to close to about 50-60% of our total sales. At a certain point in time, that's a lot, right? But the good thing is we were ahead of the curve. We were in the delivery before post-pandemic, right? So then our systems were all set up. Our resources were all set up. There was a lot of companies that only did delivery during pandemic, and they struggled to actually catch up. But for us, we were pretty good. Right?
Okay, so between, let's say, two franchisees, right? Your franchisee A and franchisee B, and an order comes through Foodpanda, how do you distribute between the two?
Oh no, every single store has its own, they call it a trading area, right? So it doesn't encroach onto each other, right?
Okay.
Of course, because Malaysia is a big country, at 280 stores, there are gaps in between spaces as well. This is where I believe then the system chooses which is the best store to actually deliver, right? Okay. But the system definitely does not allow encroaching onto the trading area itself.
All right. Final question before we go into the break. When it comes to embracing new food model deliveries, do you feel that there comes a time and place where you guys need to go off on your own and build your own software and systems on this? It's an interesting question. It's tough to do it when you actually do not have the right resources. For example, I know of a lot of food companies that do this with their own drivers, right? And in itself, with the current situation that we are in, with manpower crunch and all that presents a lot of other complications. We do, Subway, basically, we have actually doubled our effort in digital, right? That is coming, but not in the immediate future. Okay. Yeah. All right, that's fine. We'll go for one short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a bit more with Subway. Welcome back. I have with me Samad Shariff, the Country Director of Southeast Asia for Subway. Samad, let's talk a little bit more about some of the so-called white spaces in this country that you spoke of just now before the break. What would be the white spaces that we're talking about here?
Okay, in general, white spaces in Malaysia for the longest time has been basically your urbanized area, usual KL, Selangor, Penang and all that, right? But over the last 1 or 2 years, and the accessibility has actually widened with 3PD, with the delivery, right? It has actually shown us that there are a lot of white spaces on the outskirts of these urbanized areas, and maybe even slightly further in, right? Oh, yeah? Yes. So this is where some of the areas that we will be targeting, of course. And of course, our traditional methods of accessibility, I mean, Malaysian, I think almost everyone owns at least 2 cars. At least, right?
At
least 2 cars, right? And that actually helps us to ascertain that.
Not for the lack of trying in terms of infrastructure, but because we're nowhere near Singapore.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that last mile. Anyway, sorry.
Sorry, that's a
different story. We've got to get an automotive guy here.
Yeah, exactly.
But pardon me, yeah.
No, but that's one of the key few things that we're working on as well. Our thought process is, with the future coming of electric cars, do we start talking about it now, right? Building, for example, drive-through that actually provides charging stations, right? So that while people are charging, then you actually can come in and have a sup. 15, 20 minutes or 1 hour later, you come out and your car is gone, right? Accessibility towards maybe not only major roads, but secondary roads as well, right? Because again, if let's say, for example, we are actually able to position ourselves as the fresher option, people will always come to us. That's what we think, yeah.
Then that would require you to have a lot of firepower, a lot of capex being injected.
Exactly.
So and what's the story there?
Yeah, and this is where we actually transcended into the master franchise model, right? Because the previous model was where we actually had individual franchisees. So the financial power of individual franchisees may sometimes be a bit challenged, right? But with a master franchise, for example, the company that we are partnering with, Pegacorn actually has the financial muscle to actually help us to do all this, right? Open in the white spaces, open new concepts, right? Find new footprint, and even build stores for the future. For example, stores that actually will be able to deliver or will be able to sustain electric cars.
Okay,
right?
sorry, I just have to ask this.
Yes.
What is the salient differences between an individual franchise and a master franchise?
Oh, okay. In essence, Malaysia, for the last 20 years, we have actually been building stores by individual franchise. That means one store is actually owned by one owner, right? Whereas, as a master franchise, all 500 stores are actually owned by one owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's yeah.
And of course, when we talk about this idea rolling forward, do you feel that there needs to be some great amount of support from Subway Centrals, from the corporate office, so to speak, in order to assist? So what would be the idea here in terms of boosting the, I guess, talent and all that?
Okay, for us, we actually work very closely with the master franchise. We support them in all areas. And for me personally, being the business lead or the country lead, I speak to the master franchise, I wouldn't say more than my wife, but definitely very often.
Wow.
Right? Because we want to make sure that they are successful. If they are successful, we are successful, right? So basically, we provide advice. Of course, sometimes we become the gatekeeper as well to maintain the brand. But definitely, consulting, giving advice, coaching is all part of the plan. Yeah.
2 more questions before we hit to the break. The first is, of course, maintaining the quality that you speak of.
Sure.
And this, we'll go with that first.
Yeah,
Let's go with how do you maintain the quality of service?
Okay. Maintaining quality of service, for the last couple of years, we have actually started an internal process of, we call it revitalizing our operations, right? For the longest time, Subway has actually been managing operations internally, meaning we actually do our own checks, we do our own audits, right? But the last 2 years, we have actually started a third-party audit where it gives us an external eye to the operations, right? So with that results, with that audit, coupled with our own internal processes, this is where we actually see our operations getting better. Definitely.
All right. The second question before we go into the break is, of course, trying to move ahead in terms of rebranding or revitalizing, rejuvenating the brand.
Yep.
Is it going to be done in tandem with your master franchisee, or mostly done, through the corporate office out of Singapore?
No, definitely in tandem with the master franchise. Because when we go into a master franchise model, they become the de facto brand for us in Malaysia.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, we basically then provide that needed support. I mean, like I said, in terms of anything that they need, right?
Yeah.
But they become the de facto brand, and we work with them directly on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? What can the consumer expect coming in from Subway?
Okay, I would expect.
Without revealing too much.
Okay.
But that's the point. My job is to eke out stuff from you.
I would say that be prepared to see a better menu, because again, with a master franchise, the plan is for them to give us better insight. The plan is for them to use the experience to actually rejuvenate the menu to what it is. An example like I gave earlier was rendang. It could be more than that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Second thing is, like I mentioned, the plan is more accessibility with more better looking, more comfortable stores, right? Better seating, you know, better music, maybe even better aircon. I'm not quite sure. That one I have to check.
Okay. Well, we'll go for one short break before
Yeah.
we conclude our conversation
Yeah.
with Subway Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me, seated here, is Samad Shariff, hiking all the way from Singapore to Bukit Jalil, the All Asia Broadcast Centre. Of course, Samad is the South Asia boss for Subway. There are two big things that I want to talk to you about. Both of them revolve around food security.
Sure.
The first is the so-called carbohydrate crisis
Sure.
because of the Ukraine-Russia war. The second is literally the chicken crisis.
Yep.
As a Singaporean, I don't know whether you take offense at Malaysia, stopping our supply to Singapore. But apparently, Singapore is quite sorted in that sense, right? With chickens flying in from Thailand and Brazil,
all over the place.
all over the place. But I mean, jokes aside, food inflation is rising
Exactly.
in Malaysia, in
Exactly.
Southeast Asia.
Exactly.
Food supply is a big problem. I have spoken to two poultry farmers in Malaysia. They are both very concerned about what's going to look like, how things are going to look like 6 months from now. What's your view on this, both the carbohydrate and the chicken?
Okay, you know, both issues are connected and somewhat separate to a certain extent.
Okay.
Let me explain why. Wheat prices has actually been going up for the longest time, the last 1.5 years. You know, we recently did some study, and I could show you some graph. It has been going up 20, 30, 40% the last one ever, even before the conflict. Even before the conflict. So we have actually been making contingency.
What's driving the?
Oh,
because I thought it was the conflict that.
No, it was not. Before then, it already started.
What's driving
basically, it was just, and I think you would realize this. A lot of wheat producing countries, the weather patterns has actually affected a lot of stuff. Right, so basically lesser yield, lesser yield means less supply. So that's primarily what.
And
has
demand
been
is still
driving.
there.
Yes, correct. Demand, in fact, demand has gone up, right? Because for example, like us, from 200 over, we will be building another 500 stores. Means I triple my demand to a certain extent, right? So wheat has actually been going up, and we have actually been preparing for that. But chicken, I mean, to a certain extent, we have contingencies in place. But what happened with Malaysia was unexpected, but was manageable in that sense because we got contingency. Like you mentioned, we actually had contingency from Thailand and all those kind of suppliers coming in. Although then for us then the question would be, do we continue full blown plan with our contingency, or do we revert back to Malaysian chicken once when it actually opens up again? So that's a question internally that we're actually asking.
I'm just trying to understand more about this whole situation on food security. Do you feel that there is an end in sight when it comes to, say, poultry?
Okay, I would say that the next 1 to 1.5 years will be a challenge, right? But when I think in a year and a half, when it stabilizes, we will actually see prices maybe not coming back to where it was, but definitely improving somewhat, right?
Okay.
I see maybe a year and a half to that. So within that a year and a half, this is where internally our supply chain, our marketing teams, everyone is actually working to ensure that the supply is not cut, and to ensure that it comes at a sustainable price as well, right? Because if our franchisees, which is actually very important to us, our master franchise, which is actually managing our business here, if they can't sustain, that is a problem for us as well. So we are working very closely with them on that.
Two more questions. The first of the two is wheat. We spoke a little bit more about poultry, and you gave a timeline. Of course, this is your crystal ball that you're looking into. It's fine. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Perhaps better than most, actually. But what about wheat then?
Okay, like I say, wheat has actually been rising over the last 1.5 years, right? And we see with the current situation that is happening, most probably the conflict, it will actually continue still to rise at least for the next 6 months to a year as well. So we are actually mitigating that again as well. I think our supply chain has been actually talking to other contingency, right? At this point in time, the challenge is everyone is actually going for the same supply. So this is where I think
the supplier is king basically,
yes,
right now.
at this point in time, right? So this is where I think we have to leverage on the brand, right, to actually ensure that we help all markets, all countries, and all franchisees, I guess.
So in a way, you're trying to muscle your way through against all the other requesters.
I wouldn't say muscle too, but we are actually talking.
Make yourself the prettiest.
I would say that we actually talk. We actually negotiate conveniently with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there is a timeline to this, or it's just going to go south in terms of the wheat supply?
Like I say again, I foresee the next 6 months to 1 year, it may continue going north slightly, right? But it will actually stable down in the next 6 months to 1 year or so. Yeah.
What would be some of the ideas in solving this? Do you feel that we need to get more, I guess, youth into agribusiness, agro-tech? Do we need to think about talking to the market about changing their diet, less carbs, more protein, something like that?
Wow.
Or plant-based, whatever that is.
I mean, to be honest, sir, I think those questions are intricate key questions which most probably require a much deeper conversation, I guess. But just on that last point when you touched about vegan, yes, I think that could be one of the solutions as well.
And that's brought,
yes,
you guys are thinking about it?
Yes, we have actually not only
plant-based.
Plant-based, correct. We have actually been working with a few suppliers, in fact, in the last 1 year. As I said, wheat has actually been going up the last 1.5 years. Those are part of the contingency plan that we have been working.
So that is a real...
In fact, we actually have 1 or 2 products in development, and hopefully once when we actually do the required trials, most probably we can launch it. And if it's successful, then maybe we can expand that on beyond the menu, I guess. Yeah.
So final question, your business per
Yep.
se, Southeast Asia, not
Yes.
just Malaysia,
Yep.
is it heading in the right trajectory the way you
Yes.
want it? Or
Yes.
is there a lot of headwinds that you need to navigate?
Definitely headwinds are coming thick and fast.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
Across markets?
Across markets, right? But the good thing for me basically now is opening up of the borders. That actually allows us to actually do things which we haven't been able to do the last 2 years. For example, in Malaysia and Thailand, in Malaysia and Singapore, to actually get products which we have been working on the last 2 years. Right?
Only now it's rushed through the gates.
Yes, correct. So because like I say again, the last 2 years we've been working on plans, developing products, but sometimes you just can't get things through, right? So now we are getting things through, right? Tourists are actually coming back, especially for markets like, for example, Thailand. I would say that our business was about 50-60% based on tourists, and then when tourists went away, we suffered somewhat in Thailand, right? So, but that's all coming back. So that's the good news for me. And currently now, because of all this, as a whole, as a system, for Southeast Asia, we are actually positive in terms of our overall business. And that's good news for us.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming over to the show, coming all the way here to Bukit Jalil, as
No
mentioned.
problem, sir.
That was our conversation with Samad Shariff, the Country Director of Southeast Asia for Subway. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astroawani.com. You can also look for these kind of interviews on all our social sites. This is me signing off for Notepad.